Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today I'll be talking about the vulnerable group theory of financial inclusion. The theory was proposed by Peterson Ozili, and the theory argues that a lot of people cannot access financial services because they are vulnerable. In other words, there are factors that people experience that make them vulnerable. It could be poverty, it could be low income, it could be distance to eh, they could be very far away from a financial institution, and it could actually be their age, it could be their gender, it could be many factors. So the vulnerable group theory of financial inclusion actually argues and states that efforts should be made to target those who are vulnerable. Existing financial inclusion efforts should actually target those people so that they can actually be brought into the financial system and then they can have access to financial services. Now, one thing that's remarkable about this theory is that the theory argues that a major cause of financial exclusion is vulnerability. In other words, it's saying that if society can actually introduce strategies or solutions that reduce people's vulnerability, then that would have a positive impact on financial inclusion. So the theory actually has three merits. The first merit is that the theory actually makes a very first attempt to makes a very strong attempt to actually target vulnerable groups. So it's the theory is not arguing that financial inclusion efforts should be should be extended to everybody in the country or in a city. It's saying you only need to target vulnerable groups. The second merit of the theory is that the theory sort of identify members of the population that are vulnerable, and the vulnerability might be in terms of income, gender, age, and other demographic characteristics. And the third merit of the theory is that it actually presents a very cost-effective method to achieving financial inclusion, since you don't necessarily the theory is not proposing that you should achieve financial inclusion for everybody in the country. It's just saying that you should target the people who are vulnerable. So that would sort of be a more cost effective way to do that. Rather than target the entire population, you only need to target the vulnerable population. However, the theory has its demerits. The first is that, you know, obviously it's arguing that you should prioritize only vulnerable people, and which means you should ignore people who are non-vulnerable. But the people who are non-vulnerable also need financial services. Now, the second demerit of the theory is that it assumes women by default and young people are a vulnerable group. And what's interesting is that women and young people may not necessarily consider themselves to be vulnerable. So it's a very interesting theory.